Well, hello there, and welcome to another Minecraft tutorial. This episode is actually going to be a full tutorial where I walk you through how to build this block by block, just because unlike some of my other builds, this one is not quite so intuitive. If you look at it, you might not know exactly how to build it, so I'm going to show you guys how to build it. So what is this? This is a rail duplicator. It takes advantage of a glitch in Minecraft that does work in Minecraft 1.10. I'm currently in 1.10.2, the latest version, and it works. So let me show you how this works, or at least how to use it first, and then I'll explain kind of how it works and then get to the tutorial. So you'll notice I have 16 rails in my inventory. And if I check, I have filled my inventory with junk. And this is important because you don't want to accidentally pick up pumpkins. You'll understand in a second. So just fill your inventory with junk, like cobblestone or whatever. And then your first slot should be filled with whatever rail you're trying to duplicate. In this case, I'm duplicating a powered rail because it is the most expensive rail. And if you check, just so you know there's no funny business, there's nothing in the last hopper. This is the output where you get all of your duplicated rails. Right now, there's nothing there. When you start, you're going to want to make sure this dispenser is filled with pumpkins. Now, the number of pumpkins doesn't really matter too much because they do get recycled so that it can continue infinitely. But you do need enough pumpkins in there to last at least one full cycle of the system, which I believe is like 8 to 10, but just to be safe, I put a whole stack in there. You should put as many as you can in there to begin with. When you start the system, there's going to be a block here just to make sure that any extra duplicated rails don't get stuck up here, so just make sure that you put this in while you have access. So to show you how this works, I'm going to switch into game mode 0 so that I don't have infinite items. And I have 16 powered rails. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on, and I'm first going to turn off my sounds because this is a very loud machine. So there will be 2 pistons going constantly and several dispensers, so it does get pretty loud. So if you're going to do this, I suggest turning off your sounds first. Okay. And then once everything's all set up, so there's pumpkins in there, sounds are off, I'm going to turn this on, and you'll see it'll start to go to work, and nothing will happen at first. And then what you have to do is come into the corner, come into the pumpkin here as close as you can, and face the corner. And now what you want to do is, see that carpet over there? You want to face the corner so that you're touching the top corner of the pumpkin, but when that pumpkin breaks, you will be facing into the carpet. So it takes a little getting used to and trying to get to that perfect sweet spot, but eventually it becomes kind of easy to figure out where you're going to point to. So just you want to point to the carpet when it's all said and done. And then with your rails in hand, hold down right click. And then you just do this until all of your rails are done. So in this case, I started with only 16 because it's a demo and I didn't want it to take too long. But all my rails are done, and now I can stop the machine and turn my sounds back on, because now that it's off, obviously, it's fine. So 10%, oops, and done. Okay. So now I started with 16, and if we check, I have 32 rails here. So I've just doubled my rails, and of course I could go through and do this again and again and again and just have infinite rails for as long as I wanted to sit here. If I really wanted to, I could even have that output hooked up to a dropper to spit those rails back out at me and do this infinitely, but that seemed a little overboard. I felt it's not necessary. Okay, so how this works is these pumpkins, there's a glitch where if you put a rail on top of a pumpkin and then you push into it either with a piston directly or with a piston pushing a block into it, what happens is this rail gets pushed down because it'll break the pumpkin. But at the same time, when the pumpkin breaks, the rail on top of it drops as an item. And the game doesn't really realize that the rail on top of here is the same rail that's being pushed down to the ground. And so you get both the block on the floor and the item itself. And then this piston can come and pull the rail that's on the floor over to the side. And when a rail is pulled over an air block, it drops itself. So you get the drop from the block and the drop from the top of the pumpkin at the same time. So you double your rails. And the pumpkin, when it breaks, just drops itself as an item. So you can just pick all that up. And then, oops, let me switch back into game mode 1. And then there is a trick to getting dispensers to dispense pumpkins, because normally they won't, but they will do it if they're trying to dispense a pumpkin to create a snow golem or an iron golem. But of course, if we created a snow golem or an iron golem, then we'd have a mob running around and not a pumpkin. But it turns out there's a glitch in the way dispensers decide whether they're trying to create a golem or not. And let me see, I can't break that block. Let's see, what block can I break? I can't really break any blocks, but I'm going to show you how it's built anyway, so I might as well just break this. So you'll see down here there are 2 snow blocks. And then below that is another snow block. So apparently this little T shape, or R shape, I don't know what you want to call it, tricks this dispenser into thinking that there is a valid configuration for a snow golem here, even though there obviously isn't, because the snow golem would be dispensed either here to create a golem this way, or up here to create a golem this way. But having a pumpkin here doesn't actually create a golem. But the dispenser doesn't know that. It's a glitch, which I hope they don't remove. But yeah, so we're taking advantage of that glitch to make the dispenser place a pumpkin in a place that won't create a golem. And then we're taking advantage of the pumpkin breaking and piston pushing at the same time glitch to duplicate our rails. So yeah, so let me start, and then what we're doing to get our pumpkins back into the system is our output is just being filtered with a standard filter here. So we have 18, 19, 20, 20, yeah, 22 pumpkins in here acting as a filter, pointing into nowhere. And then, let's see if I can get onto this side. And then coming out of there, we have a comparator leading to a signal strength of 2 redstone dust. And when that happens, which is when you get 1 more pumpkin in there, it'll trigger this, which will turn off this torch and allow this hopper to pull 1 pumpkin and push it into this dropper tower. Now, this dropper tower is nothing fancy. It's literally run on the same... How do I get out of here? It's literally run on the same clock that we're using for these pistons. I figure we already have a clock going. Why bother getting fancy? Just use that clock. And it works perfectly fine. So, let me show you how to build it. So for the first part, you're going to need to decide where the floor of your machine is going to be. I'm just going to use this floor. I'm going to come all the way out here. And you're going to need some snow. So just all you need is 3 snow. So I'm going to put it right here. This is going to be the initial part of your, the front part of your build. And then you need 2 snow here. Now this snow you're going to want to break because you don't want that right there just yet. But you are going to want your dispenser. So you put your dispenser facing this way. And now what you want to do is create your first hopper chain. So this will be where the output comes out of. So you actually are going to end up having your hopper chain go 1 below. And so because of that, you can just place your hopper, your first hopper here, just facing down. And then your hopper output will come here. So make room for yourself and place your hoppers facing into each other for your output. And for now, you can just come up here. Obviously in survival, you're going to have to do a lot of digging and hopping around and stacking, but it'll be worth it. You get infinite rails of any type. I forgot to mention, it does work with any type of rail, so activator rails, detector rails, regular rails, and powered rails, they all work. Okay, so once you have this, what you want to do is take any block, in this case I'll just use snow because I have it on hand, and place it over here on top of that hopper. And then you want to place any rail, you will get this back so it doesn't really matter, on top of the snow block or whatever block you've used. And then you want to place your hopper minecart on top of that. And then you want to break it. So immediately what will happen is that rail that just broke will come down into here and you can get it back. In survival, that block that broke will also be down there, so don't worry about it. And now what we need to do is, in order for this dispenser to dispense a pumpkin, there needs to be snow here. So we need to force snow into this area because we can't just place it with that hopper there, or with that minecart hopper there. So what we do is we come here and we can actually start setting up the rest of our system and use that to push our block into place. So we're going to want a fence of any type, and you want to place that on top of this block, and then you're going to put the piston here, so you got to have another block on top of that, and use a sticky piston, oops, and you want to place that facing down like that. And then you can break this top block and get it back, do whatever you want. And then you're going to need to push this down, so for now we can do that by just placing a button on the side of this piston. I thought you could do that. Okay, so let's place a block next to this with a button and press that to push that into place. And you're probably going to want to place some blocks here just so you don't accidentally nudge that out of the way. You cannot place a block here because this is where we're going to actually be using our piston to pull our rail across and make it break and fall into that hopper. So yeah. So then this part is pretty much done. Remember, you can fill this up with pumpkins at any point before you start using the machine. So to test it out and see if everything works, you can drop something there and it should get picked up and brought to the last hopper, which it is. So good. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create your on-off button. Or actually, what you're going to want to do now is create your auto dropper. So this is what's going to create the clock that's going to be on pretty much all the time until you turn it off, as long as there's items in this dropper. So for that, we're going to need a comparator, repeater, some blocks, and some redstone. And that's it. So we put a a comparator here, which is coming right out of there, a repeater, a block here, put this in subtract mode, and run your redstone line across, and then a block here. So this will, if there's any items in here, they will just get dispensed. And so you can test this out and make sure it works by putting a pumpkin into that dispenser. So put that there, and it should get dispensed, and it works perfectly. Okay. The next thing we're going to want to do, sorry, one second, is create the system to pull the rail off to the side. So that's pretty simple. You just grab a sticky piston and place it over here, right across from this hole. And then you just take this and run this clock line all the way over into a block next to that. And that's it. So when you put a bunch of pumpkins into here, the first one will get dispensed and the rest won't be able to, so it'll keep the clock going. And you got that. And so that's fine. So now let's do the on-off switch, just so we don't have to keep hearing that. So for that, you just need a lever and some redstone and a repeater. So let's take some repeater. And you want to put the lever over around here. I think probably the best place to put it is where I had it here, which is 2 blocks away from your dispenser, and then 2 blocks to the side. So if we have our dispenser here, this is 2 blocks, and then 2 blocks to the side is here. And then you want to put your repeater here. And you want to, so this line is going to come around here pretty much, and allow us to turn off the system by stopping that clock, just by cutting off that comparator. But this will actually also be the line that blocks off our dropper here, or our dispenser here. And the reason we need that, it's not a big deal, but sometimes some of the duplicated rails will fly off in the distance. So we want to make sure this is as blocked off as possible. And for that, you know, we had this here and this. I mean, maybe we didn't have this, but we had that here. And if occasionally a rail flies this way, we don't want it to get stuck over there. And so while the system is running and we don't need access to that dropper, we want to put a block in the way. And so the way we do that is put a block up here, like that. And then we'll put a block here for a second. And then take a sticky piston. We got a lot of sticky pistons in this system. And put it facing this way. And then this line we're going to actually replace with a block. So let's do that. We're going to put a repeater over here to carry the signal through the block. And then we're going to put a torch up here to invert the signal. So that, if that happens, when you get that 1 tick pulse, just do it again so that it pulls the block back. So the idea is that when the system is turned on, there will be a block in the way. When the system is turned off, there won't be, so you can access that dispenser. Now the reason we didn't put the torch over here is because we're going to be putting our dropper tower here to return the pumpkins. But first we want to actually hook this clock up to this piston to make the actual system work. And so for that, it's pretty simple. You just need to run that line from that repeater, or sorry, from that, from that repeater, all the way around next to your piston right there. So you just make that line, and it's okay if it connects to there because it's all the same clock, so it's fine. And so now, if you turn it off, you should see, or turn it on. Oops. Oh, see, this is why I generally don't do these on camera. This piston actually should be up 1 higher. So when you build it, just make sure that there are you know, from your dispenser you have 1, 2, 3 blocks and then the piston. If you make it too low, that problem will happen, and it also won't work later with your dispenser or with your pumpkins. So this is why I probably shouldn't be doing this at 5 in the morning, but, you know, I wanted to get this out there. So, put my fence back in the right place, and so now, if you turn this on, that won't happen. It won't pull it across. But you do got to make sure, you do have to make sure that this is in the right place, so that it goes up to that piston. I guess you could just have it go across like that. That should be fine. And so there you go. It pushes the block in the way, and then this triggers. So this is the main system done, and if we take a rail, we can actually test it, and it should work just fine with our rail. So we turn it on, we put the 1 on there, And if we look down here, we have 2 rails, even though we only put 1, so it did duplicate everything. But you'll notice the pumpkins that are breaking end up down there too. Also, you'll notice we don't have the carpet here yet. So we're going to put the carpet in last, because we need the space over here to make the pumpkin sorter, so that our pumpkins get sent back into the system instead of being wasted and ending up as output, and then we'd have to manually reload it. And you know me, I like everything to be automatic. So, let's come down here. We want to come all the way down here, and we have our minecart, and it's putting all of the drops and from the pumpkin and the duplicated rails. They're going to come in here. Now, the duplicated rail is actually going to end up in the hopper on the other side by default, but the first rail that breaks off the top of the pumpkin is going to get picked up and come down here. So we need to sort out pumpkins from rails so that the rails don't get pushed into the pumpkin dispenser. So we're going to make a little space here, and let's break this. And what we're going to do is have our filter, which is just a hopper that goes into the wall. And we're going to fill that up with 22 pumpkins. So let's do 16, 17, 18, and then 1 everywhere else. Okay? And then we're going to make our actual sorting system, which is just a standard and simple system here. So I'm going to put a repeater coming here, because we're going to have the signal from the sorting system get repeated into here. You're going to put, you need a comparator and a redstone torch. You're going to put the redstone torch over here, and then you're going to put the comparator coming out of here. You might need to jump or make some room. And then you're going to put your redstone dust, just 1 here and 1 here. And that's it. And so what happens is, this torch will block this hopper, which we're about to put in. Actually, let's do that now, before I show you. So you're going to put a dropper, not a dispenser, facing up over here. Did I put that in the wrong space? Yes, I did. So what you actually want to do is you're going to need the hopper facing that way. So you're going to have to come down a bit, make room, and then come over here. And your hopper has to face this way. And then you can break that one. So this should be, this could be a block if you wanted to. And then you're going to want to, let's fill this back in. And right up next to this hopper, you're going to use a dropper facing upwards. And that's going to be the first dropper in our dropper elevator. But the idea here is that when this gets 1 more pumpkin, you'll notice that 1 pumpkin drained out and then it stopped. And that's because once this gets 1 more pumpkin, that signal strength will be 2, which will carry over into here, which will turn off that torch that we placed and allow this hopper to pull that pumpkin out into here. So just a standard sorting system, because obviously only pumpkins can get into this hopper because it's filled with pumpkins. So everything else will go that way. So the rails will go that way, and the pumpkins will get sucked down through here and filtered out into this system. So now all we have to do is build a path of droppers from here up to here. So you can do it forwards or backwards, whichever way you want. I think it's better to go backwards, because that way you have the final, the final thing set up here. Now, it might be a little difficult to get it in the right place, because you have to get it facing the right direction. So you're going to want to break that if you had the pumpkin there, and place it here, so that it's facing that way. This block you can break or leave, doesn't matter. I'm going to break it. And then you're going to want to have a bunch of droppers just facing up. And then, again, make a place so that you can get your droppers facing the right direction, and make it face this way. And so the idea is that any item that gets filtered into here, which will be a pumpkin from that system, will be pushed up into here, then back up through there. And so we want to do this on the clock so that it goes constantly while we're using the system. Gotta make sure I don't break anything. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is by bringing the clock signal around in a few places. So one of the places we're going to do that is we're going to break this, and we're going to put redstone dust from this clock, because this is where the clock was triggering this piston. So we're going to bring it around to trigger that dropper. Then we're going to take the clock signal from this side, from that repeater. It'll come down here, and then we're going to use that to trigger all of the rest of the droppers. So break enough out here that you can see the dropper system. And then the first place you want to put something is you want to put a repeater facing in to this corner dropper here, the one that, this one's going up and then around. So we want a repeater facing into there with a redstone line coming from that clock. So you can bring it all the way around here. And there. And so because this is a repeater, it's going to strongly power this, which means it'll power this dropper. It'll power this dropper, but it'll also power the ones next to it. So it'll power the one below it and the one here. So every time this pulses, an item will move up, and then the next time it pulses, it'll move across and up here. So that'll get it across to here. And then we use a similar technique with a repeater here to get it from here. This will power that, and that'll get it up to the top dropper. And so just bring that line around here. Uh-oh, I'm stuck. Hope I didn't break anything. Nope, we're good. And so that clock will now fire every one of those droppers. So you'll see there's 61 pumpkins in here. If we turn the system on, actually that's probably not the best way. Let's show you by putting a pumpkin in the bottom. So there's 61 pumpkins on the top, remember. So if we were to put a pumpkin in here, and then turn the system on, so, oops, when we turn the system on, okay, so 61 pumpkins, and then it placed one down, so it'd have 60. But if we look, okay, again, this is why I shouldn't be doing stuff on camera. Where did it get stuck? Doesn't seem to have gotten stuck anywhere. Where is it? Oh, right. Before you, yeah, this is a good tip to point out. Before you actually use the system, you should always put that extra pumpkin in there in the first place, because I believe, I can't really get to it right now, but I believe that bottom hopper actually locks itself too fast to bring the first one through. Yeah. So you actually want to run an extra pumpkin in there in the first place. So when you have this, you should put 19 in there so that you initialize the system. But now, if I put one more and let it run through, then that first one will have filtered through. And so now, if I run this, Now there will be 61 in here. Yep, see? So yeah, when you run that filter for the first time, make sure you put some extra pumpkins in there and let them all filter through, just to get them through the system, because that hopper below, the extracting hopper, will actually lock fast enough to not push the first pumpkin through. So you're going to want to make sure there's an extra pumpkin in there to get through the system. But yeah, so that's pretty much all of it. And now you just want to do a bit of maintenance here. You want to make sure that these duplicated rails and stuff can't fly off. So you want to cover up this area, and then cover up this area. And then the last thing to do is when you cover this up, you want to put a carpet here. And the reason for that, carpet, is so that you can hold down right click. So if I put a full block here and I look at that, when I hold down right click, it's going to actually place the rail in this block before the dispenser has a chance to dispense the next pumpkin, and that's going to break things, because then it won't be able to dispense the pumpkin, and then you won't get the duplication. But if I don't put anything here, then when I look at it, if there's a block here, and I look at it, it's going to place the rail here, and that's not going to work either, because then you're going to get some of your rails over here. So instead, you put a carpet here, and what that does is, when you look at the carpet and try to place a rail, it won't do anything, right? So if I have a rail here, and I try to place it, nothing happens. So it won't place the rail, and you'll keep it until the next pumpkin is dispensed, which will block your view, and then you'll be able to place a rail on top of the pumpkin. So, to test it out, let's just double check our output. We have that extra pumpkin from before. And we have enough pumpkins in here. 61, that's plenty. We got our rail. And then again, you want to fill your inventory with junk so you don't pick up those pumpkins before they get sucked up into the system. So I already have plenty of junk here, but let's take a bunch of this as well. Fill it up. Alright, so now we won't pick up pumpkins, and we have our rail, which one rail isn't going to be that great, so let's do the 16, the same thing that I tested with. Turn the system on. Turn the sounds off. And test. So face carpet. Oh. Probably be a good idea not to be in creative mode when you test. So, I don't know how I want to do this. I guess 16. Change into, always be in survival mode when you do this, because you already have infinite resources in creative. So, turn the system on. Face the top and carpet. Right there. And go. And then just let it run through all of the rails. And then it stops. You can turn it off. And then check our output. And we have 32, exactly as we would expect. So, there you go. You know, this probably wasn't a good idea for me to go through all of this on camera in terms of doing it at 5 in the morning. I did make a few mistakes, but I corrected them, and hopefully it was clear enough to follow. If there's anything that was confusing because of my, terrible organization or for any other reason, let me know in the description and I'll try to explain it best, or maybe if enough people are confused, I'll try to come up with a, more organized tutorial that's not done at 5 in the morning. But I just wanted to show this because this is a good way to get infinite of any type of rail. And just to prove it works with any type of rail, let's use a detector rail. Let's grab 16 of those. I'm picking 16 just because it's a nice number. It's big enough to see the duplication works, and it's also small enough that it doesn't take forever to show. So, go into survival, turn the machine on, look at the carpet, and go. That's probably not the best place to look. Maybe right there. 9, 8. Oh. What just happened? Okay, I'm honestly not sure about what just happened there, but I'm just gonna go with it and continue on with that. I think it was just block lag. So you'll notice that sometimes you can actually pick up some of the rails as well, which is fine because you're duplicating rails, so you'll just keep duplicating more. But I started with 16, and I have 34. So you'll see instead of 32, it's 34 because of that extra rail that I picked up. So sometimes you'll get more than double on a single AFK session because you'll pick up some of the rails, which is fine, right? More is always better. So that's pretty much it. Basically, I found out about the rail duplication glitch by pushing a piston into a rail on top of a pumpkin, and my first thought was, how can I automate this? And I did. So, fully AFKable. You can just stand there holding down the right click button, and all of the rails you had will be duplicated. And again, if I wanted to, I could put another dropper tower coming out on this side that just spits the rails back out at you, and you could just cycle them infinitely and get an infinite number of rails until the system backs up. And that would be perfectly fine too. That would make it even more automatable because then you could just sit there forever. Problem with that is then how do you get the output? So yeah. But anyway, you can do whatever you like with this, but if you need rails, here's an infinite number of duplicated rails. So I'm probably going to go to sleep soon. So until next time, keep duplicating your rails and keep redstoning. And good night.